Now, I'm going to explain the different advantages, limitation of behaviors. First of all, the advantages and limitation of behaviors in the school of within psychology is fundamental focus on observable behavior rather than internal mental states pioneered by figures like John V. Watson and E.F. Skinner. In the early 20th century, a revolution defined by advanced or scientific approach psychological study. At its core, behaviorism posits that all behaviors are learning through interactions with the environment, primarily through conditioning process. This perspective emphasizes that psychologists both should to be predict and control behavior by understanding the relationship between environmental stimuli and individual responses. This presentation will delve into the foundation principle of behaviorism, explore its significant advantages, various practical applications, and critically examine its inherent limitations. We will also briefly compare it with other psychological theory and concepts its growing relevance in competent psychology. Core principle of behaviors, environmental determinants. Behaviors assert that all behaviors that occur from the environmental, the human mind is viewed as landscape, tabula rasa, and paired with experiences shaping who we become. Principle answers the profound impact of nature over natural in shaping individual action and personalities. Classical conditioning, discovered by Ivan Pavlov, classical conditioning involves learning by association. A neutral stimulus becomes associated with naturally occurring stimulus, leading a learning response. A classic example is Pavlov's dogs, which is learning to salivate at the sound of a bird and having associated it with food. Operant conditioning, developed by B.F. Skinner. Operant conditioning focus on learning through reinforcement and punishment. Behavior followed with by desirable considering consequences are more likely to be repeated, reinforced, while those followed with by undesirable consequences are less likely punishment. This mechanism highlights how consequence shape volitional actions. Observable behavior focus. All hallmark of behavior is its exclusive focus on measurable and observable behaviors. Unlike other psychological schools, it intentionally disagrees internal mental processes like through emotion and motivation, the mind then scientific due to their subjective nature and difficulty in empirical measurement. The advantages of behaviors systematic and structural approach. Why? Because the behavior is a far clear methodological frameworks for understanding how learning occurs. Its principles are straightforward and can be applied in various contexts, from educational settings to therapeutic interventions. Measurability and predictability. By focusing solely on observable behavior, behavior is allowed to for precise measurement and prediction of behavioral outcome. This scientific rigor has contributed significantly to psychology's credibility as an empirical science. Effective behavior modification. Behaviorist principles have proven highly effective in developing therapies for behavior modification. Techniques such as applied behavior analysis (ABA) are widely used in the treating conditions like autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder ADHD, and various phobias, daily tangible improvements in patient life. In practical and education. In educational context, behaviorists underpin many teaching strategies. Positive reinforcement such as praise and rewards use foster good study habits, promote desirably the classroom behavior, and facilitate the skill acquisition in the school. Creating more conducive learning environments. Limitation of behaviors. Neglect on internal process, overly reductionist reliance on animal studies, inability to explain complex behaviors. First of all, in neglect of internal processes, one of the most significant criticisms is behaviorist world says if disagreed for internal cognitive processes. This cannot account for complex mental activities such as critical thinking, problem solving, memory, imagination, or decision making, which are fundamental to human experience. Overly reductionist critics argue that the behavior reduces complex human behavior to a simple stimulus response machines. This reducing view overlooks crucial elements like emotion, thought, subjective experience, free will, and personal agency, presenting an incomplete picture of human psychology. Reliance on animal studies. Much of behavior theory, particularly operant conditioning, was developed through experience on animals, rats, pigeons, while valuably generative finding from animal behavior directly to the nuances of human behavior can be problematic limiting the scope of exploratory power for human psychology. And finally, inability to explain complex behavior. Behavior is strong to explain complex human behaviors such as language acquisition, creativity, altruism, or develop of divergent thinking. It also falls short in according for behavior that occur without obvious external reinforcement or thus driven by internal motivation. Behaviorism versus other psychology theories. Social learning theory incorporates observable learning modeling and cognitive process learning through observation. Others considering consequence, not just direct experience. Albert Brandon is a key figure. Humanity psychology emphasizes pre-personal growth and indirect awareness, focus on shell actualization potential and subjective experience. Key figures include Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. Cognitive psychology direct studies mental processes, thinking, memories, perception. Use the mind as an information processor, exploring how people acquire, process, and store information. Psychodynamic theory focuses on unfocused drive and early childhood experience. Explores how unconscious conflicts and past experience shape personalities and behavior. Sigmund Freud is founder. Behavior is considered to determinist and simplest to proponents of these other theories. who argue that it fails to capture the richness and complexities of the human experience, while behaviorists provides a strong foundation for understanding learning behaviors. This alternative perspective broadens the scope of psychology inquiry by incorporating internal states, social contexts, and individual agency and practical application of behaviors, education, therapy, animal training, and AI and robotics. For now, I only told AI and robotics because in the other video, I told about education, therapy, and animal training with behaviorism. In AI and robotics, even including X files like artificial intelligence and robotic behavior is principle in for learning algorithms, reinforcement learning, and machine learning paradigm directly applies to concept of rewarding desired action and penalize undesirable one to enable autonomous agents to learn and adapt within complex environments. In recent development and critics, integration with cognitive behavior therapies or CBTs for friends. One of the most significant modern development is the integration of behaviorist principle with cognitive psychology, leading to cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT), recognize that thought, feeling, and behavior are interconnected, addressing not just observable action but also underlying cognitive processes that drive them. This syntaxis has created a highlight experience and widely used therapeutic modality for a broad range of psychology issues. In ethical concern, behavior modification, while effective behavior modification techniques has faced ethical scrutiny, particularly when applied to vulnerable populations. Individuals with severe intellectual prisoners concerned revolve around issues of autonomy potential for abuse and the balance between controlling behavior and fostering individual choice and dignity. Best practice now emphasize ethical guidelines and informing concerns. Multi-therapeutic approach. The limitation of pure behaviorists has inspired psychology to adopt more eclectic and multi-theoretical approaches. Modern psychologists rarely adhere strictly to single school of thought, instead drawing settings from behaviorists, cognitive psychology, humanistic psychology, or neuroscience to create a more holistic understanding of human behavior and mental processes. In neutral versions of learning, ongoing research in neuroscience continues to complex and refine behaviorist understanding of learning study brain plasticity, neutral pathways involving reinforcement, and the biological underpinnings of habit formation provide a deeper psychological context for the behavioral observation made decades ago. In conclusion, a balanced view of behaviors. Behavior, despite its historical critics and inherent limitation, remains an indispensable part of psychology science. Its enduring legacy lies in its rigorous scientific methodology and the powerful tools it has provided for understanding and modifying observable behavior. Values tools for change. Behavior is a first experimental, validated, and practical tools for behavior change applicable across education, therapy, and animal training. It focuses on systematic reinforcement and punishment, providing clear strategies for shaping desired actions. Add the scientific rigors by emphasizing observable and measured phonema. Behaviorism contributes significantly to establish psychology and scientific discipline for its focus on environmental evidence and experimental control. Complemented by other insights. For comprehensive understanding of a human experience, behaviorism must be integrated with cognitive, humanistic, and biological perspectives. It is vital piece of puzzle, but not the entire solution. And finally, a change psychological practice. Organizing both the strengths and limitations of behaviors allow practitioners and researchers to employ its principles effectively while also leveraging insight from other fields, leading to more holistic and nuanced psychology intervention. Thank you very much. That's all for me.